And joining us now in studio, Dave Toycen, President and CEO of World Vision Canada. And as I like to say, whenever you visit us, welcome home.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Every time you visit us, you've usually been off somewhere else around the world.
Well, oftentimes I guess that's the case.
You've been back for a week and a half from Haiti.
Right.
What'd you see, Dave?
Well, it was a mixture. On the what I call, I guess, the glass half full, there was more normality. People were out in the streets, far less debris. It seemed a bit more normal, just generally, even though this is a couple of days before the anniversary, so there was a kind of awareness that was coming up with local people as well. But then the other side of it, driving down one of the streets where, I'd seen some good things, and then turning around the corner and then looking out and seeing literally hundreds of tents and shacks where people are still stuck in really very inadequate housing. I mean,
where they have been living for 2 straight years.
For 2 straight years, that's right. And the positive thing is that one of my chances I had with one of the displaced folk was someone that we had helped in one of our programs who's now in a structure with her family. And I asked her, I said, what? She said, I was a receptionist before all this happened. She said, 3 of my family members died. Our whole, where we were living was just flattened. And she said, I've been living here for almost 2 years. And she said, now I'm in a place where I got 4 walls. It's humble. She said, it's still not as good as what I had, before when I had my job. But she said, I'm determined. I'm going to go back and finish my university that I was working on. And she started a little cooking business. And she said, I still have hope that I can make a difference for my son. She had a little boy, that our life can be better. I'm not giving up. And I think that's the resilience and determination that you encounter all the time.
You mentioned normalcy off the top. What constitutes normal life in Haiti? Let's just take Port-au-Prince.
Good question.
What's normal in Port-au-Prince these days?
Well, I would say normal is you have some satisfaction that you've got shelter that will at least keep you dry, that you're fortunate when you've got 60% unemployment. If you've got a little business or something to do, that would be, for some people at least, has become normal. You've got access to water, and your children are back in school. Those would be probably the most normal, but there's still tens of thousands of people where that's not normal.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's possible to sort of characterize this percentage of the population hasn't made any progress. However, this percentage, you can definitely see the difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How would you break it down?
Yeah, I would break it down in the sense, probably one of the biggest issues would be the downside is we still got roughly 500,000 people who are still in inadequate housing. But we had 1.6 million before, in terms of when the earthquake hit. So that would be some idea, one measure of progress. I think it's tougher on the economic side because it's hard to keep track of, who had jobs or who didn't. But all I can say is the statistics that I have access to in the camps, it's still as high as 60%. And I think before the earthquake, it was around 40%. So,
as you consider humanitarian projects around the world, from today going back as far as you want, would this be the biggest ever?
Well, certainly in terms of, for us as an organization, it was the largest in terms of being in a highly urbanized center. And for us, it was roughly a $2 million response internationally, not just from Canada. We were about 50 million from Canada. So at that level, it was huge. Although I have to say, when you look at all the countries in the tsunami in 2005, it was bigger, but you remember that was a series of countries. This is one country. The fact that it's a city that's way overcrowded, and just the situation in Haiti itself, the lack of infrastructure, high unemployment, still aspects of violence, and a government that's been struggling for a long, long time.
We're going to get to the politics, but I want to pick up on the violence. You say still acts of violence.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Well, it just means that you have to be aware of safety in terms of moving about the city. And I think it's fair to say that anyone who's perceived to be as an expatriate or not from there is probably at more risk. But we've even had some of our local staff who have been either harassed or attacked. That has happened.
Attacked?
Well, some sort of mugging or some kind of stealing that's going on. So it's a reality. And especially, I think, when you're in the midst of a disaster like that and so many people rather, are looking for the basics of life. It's understandable. If you can't feed your child, to what lengths you will go to get something to be able to feed them.
Did you personally feel vulnerable when you were down there?
No, I didn't really. But I've been lots of dangerous places.
Yes, you have.
You can't think about it too much. I go, we require everybody to be aware of security, but But no, I don't. I mean, my experience with Haitian people in the work that we do, whether it's during this time or before, we do a lot of rural work, especially in Haiti, for last 30, 35 years. I just find them genial, gracious, wonderful people to work with. But I have seen them angry, and for example, I can say when we were first responding, some of the issues just around food distribution were really challenging, because once again, you had so many people that were short of food, and you only need 2 or 3 people to be kind of troublemakers that it can turn dangerous pretty quickly.
But was your view, when you're hungry, you'll do different things that you wouldn't do when you're not hungry?
Yeah,
that's
I think it accentuates it. Absolutely, absolutely. And also, I just want to be sure to say that we're talking here about a small minority of people, because I found, even in the midst of incredible want, the graciousness and the patience that people had.
Dave, let's talk about money, because when this happened 2 years ago this month, the world really did. I mean, a significant chunk of the world did respond. $4.5 billion pledged, according to the United Nations. However, I also read that only about half of that money has actually only come through so far. Why is that?
Well, I think it's, the way I describe it, it's a bit like two realities crossing each other. You have on the one hand the donor countries, and I must say Canada's been certainly one of the most generous.
We're number one in the Americas, I think.
That's right, absolutely. And so along with that, though, there still is the cry to the Haitian government, we're not giving you any more until you lower the corruption and you develop more capacity. And then you've got the Haitian government saying, here we go, the same old tricks again. This money's been raised on the backs of our tragedy, and you won't give us the money. And so I think what has to happen, it seems to me there's some truth in both those comments. So my hope is that we'll see more of the donor countries, as well as the Haitian, getting together and saying, okay, here's what we can do on the Haitian government side. We'll need some help from you, but here's what we can do to lower the corruption, to become more effective. And then basically the Western countries saying, all right, we're willing to invest in that. We're willing to take some risk and be part of that. I think that's critical on the money piece.
Is this country, though, still so dysfunctional 2 years later that it can't improve its on-the-ground institutions adequately to give donor countries the satisfaction they need that their money's not just going down a sinkhole?
I don't think they can unless there's some change. And I think people need to realize, along with the kind of brokenness and lack of capacity before the earthquake, you also had some of the key bureaucrats, key politicians that were killed in the earthquake as well. So if anything, it's worse. We were hoping at World Vision that this would be an opportunity where there would be a real chance to help build the capacity of the Haitian government. And our hope was that the interim Haiti Recovery Commission would set up a structure where, say for example around health or education, there would be a Haitian government minister, and then to them would be any expertise that's in Haiti as well as outside from NGOs or anywhere else. They would be part of a group working together about that, around that particular need, say in education, come up with a plan, and that would be the plan that everybody worked to. Unfortunately, what we got was more project by project. And from our perspective, that's one of the biggest factors that's been missing in helping us move forward.
That commission you just talked about, we're on it, right? Canada's got a position on that?
Yes, yes.
Are we having any influence?
Well, the difficulty is the commission's over. Its terms of reference have come to an end, and one of the things that the new government there is trying to decide is whether or not they're going to renew it, or they're simply going to take all of it on themselves and do it. And that has not been resolved. So that's another negative in the sense that we need clarity, and it hasn't happened yet.
Can they manage on their own?
Well, I don't think they can unless there's some help with capacity. I believe the Haitian government has indicated that. There's very clear, though, they are responsible for their country, and I think we have to respect that.
How would you characterize the work of the Recovery Commission so far?
Well, I just think it's been less effective than we hoped for. We needed more guidance. I mean, we've learned very quickly from other disasters. It may look like we're big or we've got money, but there's no way we can run a country or even be responsible for a country. And so, not to make excuses here, believe me, because there are things we can do. We can do significant things. But we can't be the group that decides what's the plan for a country, what's the future for their people. That's a government.
You've been to Haiti many times, but of course, most recently, just a couple of weeks ago when the anniversary took place, and I presume you had a chance to see the $1 billion that Canadians, either through their taxes or privately have given to Haiti from 206 to 212. And I wonder if you could tell them and us, what's our money going for?
Well, I would say the vast majority, certainly on the NGO side, and I'm not, I'm not a member of the government, so I'm going on what I know. The vast majority of it has gone for immediate things like food. I mean, World Vision alone, for example, we've fed over 2.5 million people over the last 2 years. Water, in our case, millions of liters. Government money has gone for some of that as well. Simply helping with, say, things like getting children back into school, building schools. I think over 630 schools have been built, much of it by Canadian money. Children, there's more children back in school, certainly in the camps. I think the number of children in the camps that are in school is something like 80%, and the national average is around 40%. So there's money that's gone into that. Then bigger structure things. I mean, one of the things that we never thought we would get in is we discovered that waste from the city of Port-au-Prince was just being dumped into a hole next to the sea. And we actually ended up getting money from the Canadian government to help that. We're actually closing it down now, and they've chosen a new site. But something like that you'd never think of. But the raw sewage into the ocean with this cholera epidemic, you can imagine the potential of that, what that was.
Well, pick up on that if you would, because yeah, cholera is something that we thought we had beat, but it's been back in it with a vengeance in Haiti, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, with something like cholera, now that it's there, I'm not sure we can ever get rid of it completely. But the good news is, I mean, countries like India, Bangladesh, they have cholera all the time, and they've figured out ways. And the good news is, I think we're figuring some of that out in Haiti. People will get sick, but they don't have to die.
Well, but from what I read, 7,000 dead already in Haiti from cholera, 500,000 people affected.
But that majority was earlier on when the first exposure and epidemic started.
Have they turned the corner on it now?
Well, I think I'm reluctant to say we've totally turned the corner, but there's no question there's much more prevention going on, and the death numbers are certainly way down.
Okay. Dave, tell me this. Do most people in Haiti have access to the basics? Food, water, toilet, doctor?
I would say from what I've seen, yes. But there's still places you can go where you could talk to local people who would say either they haven't had adequate food or the food they wanted. But in terms of the basics, yes, I think that's true.
You did talk politics earlier, and I want to come back to that because Haiti has, of course, just had some elections that were A, delayed, B, controversial. Michel Martelly elected president in a runoff. Lengthy appointment process for the new prime minister. They finally got a new prime minister. All of this political controversy, how has that had an impact in this country trying to get back on its feet?
Well, I think it's slowed down the momentum. It's kind of common sense, I think, that it's been a bit of a distraction. I think the other issue for the new president, who I think, by the way, from the words he said, he's put a real emphasis on education. They just got a major grant from the World Bank, I think, for $70 million to every child in school. And you heard the earlier statistic of 40% aren't in school. So that's a great goal. The other issue is just business investment. There's a fair amount of emphasis on business investment. We're very supportive of that because we think Haiti's future is about better livelihoods for people.
Well, okay, but this was a country that business wasn't exactly flocking to before the earthquake. Now the unemployment rate, I read, according to the CIA fact book, 41%.
Yep.
And now that the country is recovering from an earthquake, I can't imagine that it's going to be any more attractive a place to invest.
Right.
So what do you do about that?
Well, that's where the Haitian government, and rightly so, I think, is arguing we've got to have some more, we need some of this aid money to help rebuild the infrastructure. So we've got decent roads, decent security, and decent rule of law. Business is going to find it very difficult to invest if those things aren't in place. And of course, that's the big question. I think the other reality that's really important is for people to realize that the new president does not have a majority in the government. So he's a minority leader as well. So it isn't just what he wants. He has to convince the politicians in the government to vote for whatever he's asking for. And that's the other piece that we're really concerned about that could slow things down.
Is he in over his head?
I'm not, certainly it's a new experience for him. And from what I've seen, there are some good people around him that are advising him. The new prime minister comes from work with the Clinton Foundation. He's got a background working there. He's Haitian. So we'll see. We'll see.
When this happened, the response you got at your organization, World Vision, was I mean, pretty significant, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
How much money did you guys take in?
We took in just over $50 million.
50. What have you been spending it on?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to be repeating a bit here. That 2.5 million people being fed, that's part of what we've done. We've done reuniting about 1,000 children with their families. We've renovated about half a dozen schools, built a new one. We've been doing water distribution, health clinics, cholera clinics. I mean, it's really been quite vast. The waste project that I just described to you.
How many people you got down there?
Well, normally we have about 800 for the development work. We have a large development program in the country in about 4 regions. And then in addition to that, we brought in another 300 to 400 people, either more Haitians on staff, and in some cases we brought in expats as well because we needed more expertise.
Is that just World Vision Canada?
No, that's World Vision
World
International.
Vision, everything.
Right.
That's
We've had
everything.
about 5 to 6 Canadians involved directly from here.
Okay. Let me talk about Michaëlle Jean. Of course, our former Governor General is from there, now a UNESCO Special Envoy to Haiti, and she had this to say on the 2-year anniversary of this. She said, "The most distressing evil is the lack of coordination among efforts to fight these ills, the terrible mess among projects that proliferate on the ground in the most chaotic of ways, all in the name of a good conscience and ill-conceived solidarity, has been turned into a real business scheme. Haiti has been made a vast laboratory for all manners of trial and errors, a testing ground for deficient strategies that for decades have produced nothing truly viable. The aid and handout system has become a business, a deal for some as it generates opportunities for embezzlement and corruption. Utter dependency on international aid built right into state structures becomes corrosive." Would you comment on that?
Oh, a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that. I mean, once again, it's hard for me to generalize across organizations because I can't speak for them.
But you've seen this.
There's certainly inefficiency. I would say certainly from a World Vision perspective, we would look back and say we think there needs to be better coordination amongst the non-government organizations. I think one of the statistics that I find particularly discouraging, of the 295 agencies that are registered with the government in Haiti, we're one of them, 19 have given reports. 19. So that shows you how much information is being passed, at least officially, on to the government itself, which we think is a responsibility for any organization.
Less than 10%? Why such a low return?
I don't know, other than people simply, I'm sure part of the argument, they're busy, they've got a lot to do. My hope was, I was hoping that when the disaster struck, after it struck, that it would have been an opportunity to actually ramp up the opportunity to register organizations and use this as a chance to build that capacity of the government. The money never appeared for that. I think it was a tremendously lost opportunity.
You know, you've heard this before, but some people wonder whether humanitarian aid actually ends up doing more harm than it does good. And you know, with all of what Michaëlle Jean just described there, she certainly seems to be describing a situation where it may be doing more harm
well,
than
I mean, the part that's complicated, I think, is early on in the emergency itself. When you're dealing with people, it's you know, just fighting for life. And so obviously, I think there's some shortcuts taken there sometimes, and I think it's being a little unrealistic to think that that's always going to be so rational and logical. It's really difficult. But I think the argument is there has to be ownership by the local people. I mean, we're spending more, over the long period, we'll spend more on development than we will on this emergency. And we believe the secret to good development work also applies this. It has to be under, as much as possible, the ownership of the local people. How are they being engaged? How is it helping them?
I don't mean this to sound paternalistic, though, but are they capable of doing it? They've just been through hell.
Oh, no, I'm saying, not, I don't, as I say, in the middle of the disaster, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think we still have to be sure we're hearing their voices. I mean, for example, at World Vision, I think it's the first time we've done this, we actually had a sort of watch line, whether it was a cell phone or through direct writing a note in a box to actually say to us if you didn't like something that was happening in the area that we were working in. I mean, so you always have to have that. I think we have to be more aggressive about that. But yes, the other thing I would say, this whole culture of dependence, and I think all of us, whether it's church groups, governments, organizations who are down there, we have to be critical about that. Because I think there's a lot of evidence that says we all kind of respond to what the language is a meta-narrative. What's the story that guides us? And there's a story out there that says Haitians can't look after themselves. right? There's also another story that says everybody who comes in to help must have their own agenda and they can't be trusted.
And neither is correct.
Exactly. Exactly. And so how do we help change that story? And one of the ways, and this is where I think Michael Jean is absolutely right, we have to figure out ways where the authority, where the opportunity to grow, to develop, it has to be in the hands of the Haitian people.
But according to Madame Jean, 1% of funds committed to Haiti's reconstruction have gone to the Haitian government. 1% has been distributed to Haitian NGOs. Why aren't Haitian institutions playing more of a role in their country's development?
Well, I simply think it's an onus on the governments that are providing this aid to be asking the question, and I'm sure they are at some level. I just, as an outsider, I just don't think it's robust enough. What are we doing to help the Haitian government build its capacity? I think that's critical.
Let me ask you about voodoo. Now, voodoo has a long history in Haiti, and a lot of it is not very constructive when it comes to helping people get back on their feet. Do you see evidence of that down there?
Well, I guess my concern is that whenever, if the faith or the religion that people are following, it can be true, I'm a Christian, we have to be sure that our faith doesn't lead to a kind of fatalistic view of life, that somehow everything's beyond my control. I think that's really devastating to any of us, but especially poor people. And I'm not an authority on voodoo, and it's an extremely complicated, sensitive issue, because many would argue it's part of Haitian culture.
Well,
and it is, absolutely. But I just make the general statement, not necessarily just voodoo, but any religion that somehow encourages the idea that we can't, we're at the whim and whatever of forces beyond our control. And so it's sort of, this is the way it is, and I'm stuck. I think that's unhelpful. If voodoo contributes to that, then I think it's unhelpful. If Christianity contributes to that, then I think it's or Islam or any other religion.
I mean, it's by no means the only religion that has some controversial practices. You know, there are religions that deny blood transfusions or, you know, medical assistance. And I've heard similar kinds of stories about voodoo, whereby for what perhaps Western eyes would consider superstitious reasons, people refuse to touch certain things or accept help. Or, I mean, how does one get around what are potentially 100, 200 years of culture and religious practice?
Oh, I absolutely think it's education. I mean, and that's...
Can you do that in the middle of a disaster?
Well, you can get back to it faster than you think. I mean, I'm trying to think my memory. It seems to me the schools opened about 9 months after. It was something in that time frame, which I thought was pretty good in light of everything else. So education's critical. And the good news is that in all my experience, if there's one thing that Haitians believe in, it's education. And we also know for a good workforce, as part of the economic recovery, you have to have an educated population. It's very difficult if you don't. So that makes that a really critical feature as we look to the future.
But we talked about 41% unemployment.
Yes.
What does that 41% do all day?
They're basically trying to find a day job, some little thing they can do, find something, sell it. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of creativity in this. It isn't that people are just laying around and being lazy. Believe me, you certainly learn that when you're there. The people in the streets trying to do something, sell something, buy something, it's pretty impressive.
One of the things we were also told when the earthquake hit was that not nearly strict enough building codes were employed in Haiti, and therefore the buildings were far more fragile than they ought to be.
Yes.
When the new buildings are put up, are the codes tougher?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And unfortunately, that's also slowed things down, as you can imagine. Now, especially for people, I would say from organizations who are accountable to certain worldwide standards on how you do relief work, obviously, World Vision's one of them. If we don't do this right, then we get in more trouble. So that has slowed things down. But the good news is, from our understanding, the government has lifted the standards in terms of what the expectations and requirements are. And that's the other piece about this that's so important is, what are we doing to prepare for the next one? What's happening so that there's, whether you're talking about, you know, what better preparations in light of hurricanes, or whether you're talking about another earthquake, what are we doing to put measures in place that protect people? And that's another part of this as well.
Dave, you've visited our studio many times, and I want to ask you now about something that I'm not sure I've asked you about before, but we've got a few minutes left here, and I'd like to spend a little time on it. You mentioned you're a Christian. Does that mean you've accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior?
I describe it, I'm a follower of Christ.
You're a
yes.
follower of Christ. When you go and see what happened in Haiti, how do you rationalize in your own head that God exists, loves us, and cares about us?
Well, I just think it flashes in my mind some of the worst situations. You really struggle with that. You really struggle with that. In the end, I have to say it is a mystery. It is, even to me as a believer, I still see it as a mystery. What helps me, and I don't know if this helps other people or not, but what helps me is I'm just reminded a key part of, obviously the essential part of the Christian faith is the fact that Jesus died on the cross. And maybe this is just philosophical rationalization, but when I think about the world, and if in fact God exists and God's Son dies on the cross to provide us a redemption and, quote, salvation for all of us, should I be too surprised that human beings, when they do terrible things to each other, or things are done to them, that kind of suffering is going to be a total surprise when God himself actually died one of the worst horrific deaths you could imagine?
Okay, I hear you, but those are two different things you just said. You know, man killing man is one thing. Nature killing man. How does a God-fearing Christian rationalize in his own head this planet killing God's subjects?
Well, the basic view is that there's something broken in this world. Now, why God chooses to let it stay broken? Good question. Good question.
Don't you get dissatisfied from time to time
yeah.
just saying it's a mystery?
Oh, the older I get, the more impatient I am. I confess that. I long for the days when some of the situations that I've seen, Haiti would be one of them. I'm hoping before I die, because I'm getting closer to the end than the beginning, that I'll be around to see something of the new Haiti that we're all longing for. I hope I'm around. I hope I live long enough. I hope I live long enough to see something new in North Korea, right? I hope I live long enough to see peace in Somalia. Is that possible? I don't know. But so I'm impatient. And every time you see these terrible things, at least for me, I go through the same thing again. And I start questioning my faith. I said yes as a little boy of 5 years old, and I'm still saying yes today, but sometimes I'm really close to no in these dark moments.
That is wonderfully honest, and one of the reasons why we love having you on this program.
Thank you.
Dave Toycen, it's awfully good of you to join us once again here on TVO, President and CEO of World Vision Canada. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.